Hey guys! So are you applying to college soon and wondering what role race plays in college admissions, and also maybe curious about what schools don't consider race in their college admissions policies and what that might mean for you? If so, that's what we're going to discuss today. Before we get started though, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already, and head to SupertutorTV.com where you can check out the best ACT prep course ever. It's over 50 hours of video tutoring with me. I've scored perfectly on the exam as an adult, and I want to share all of the tips and strategies that I use with my private students with you guys. You can check out that course at SupertutorTV.com. The other thing that I want to talk to you guys about is our new SAT course, which is going to drop this fall. If you're interested, please sign up for our mailing list at SupertutorTV.com/subscribe, and we will keep you posted when that is ready to go. So let's get started with this particular video. First thing I'm going to do is go through the 8 states that have basically banned race as a factor in admissions. And those states are California, Michigan, Washington, Florida, Nebraska, Colorado, Arizona, New Hampshire, and Oklahoma. There are a couple of other states that for a little while may have had a policy similar to this, like Texas, but then they did away with it. But those are the 8 states right now that if you go to an in-state institution in any of those states, race will not be considered as a factor in your admissions. And then there's a couple of other universities that also have a similar no race considered an admissions kind of policy. One of them is Caltech, which is a very highly ranked math and science focused college in Southern California. And then finally, I want to add a couple other university systems that, though I couldn't find information to confirm whether or not they consider race, and technically I don't think they're banned from considering race in admissions, they seem to have similar percentiles of enrollment to these schools that have colorblind admissions policies. And those are Stony Brook University and the University of Hawaii. Basically, they have very high Asian American populations compared to other universities, and they have quite a bit of diversity. But again, they are not technically race-blind universities, but good to know. So let's now move this into a discussion of who does this kind of policy help versus race-conscious admissions, and who does this kind of policy hurt? So just because affirmative action based on the color of your skin has been outlawed at these colleges doesn't mean that these colleges aren't making serious efforts to try to increase minority enrollment or to increase particularly underrepresented people who are from underprivileged backgrounds. I'm most versed in what the UC schools are doing, and there's also a lot more written about UCs than some of these other colleges. I would guess that University of Michigan is definitely doing some of this stuff as well, but I don't know entirely. And I don't know personally as much about sort of how the systems work in some of these other states that I mentioned. But what I want to talk to you guys about is how basically the UC schools have tried to adapt and how they've tried to boost campus diversity despite the fact that they're not considering race in admissions. Many UC campuses, rather than just admit students based in a holistic way like many other colleges do, and what I mean by that is they look at your test scores, they look at your grades, they look at your activities, and they look at your essays, boom, right? Rather than just kind of look at those 4 components, maybe a little bit of teacher recommendations, what they're trying to do is give a couple of paths to admission. So one path to admission is to have all the normal things that most colleges ask for and to do really well at those. But the alternative path to admission, particularly for UC schools, is to throw out the test score element and not really worry about that element very much. It doesn't mean you don't have to take tests. You do have to take the ACT or the SAT still, but those scores don't matter that much. Instead, for those admits, the schools are focusing on what your GPA is and what your contribution is to the particular community that you're a part of. This policy holds for California residents more than for people who are out of state. That's not to say that I think Berkeley or UCLA aren't probably also looking to try to admit people who are out of state and might be from underprivileged backgrounds. I would guess that the university would also be interested in that kind of a situation as well, potentially. But I do know one of its primary goals is to elevate Californians who work hard out of poverty and into more opportunity. So basically who that helps shepherd in to the university are students who go to underperforming schools, who live in bad neighborhoods, who have really not so amazing high schools. Those students are advantaged in this particular system. However, that hurts a few people. And I'm going to talk about now who that potentially hurts. Well, one group is anyone who is from an underrepresented minority but goes to a high school with a lot of kids who are not underrepresented minorities or who are scoring higher than they are. Those kids might be at a disadvantage in this system. Another group that would be at a disadvantage in this system is anybody who is significantly less well off than a lot of the kids at their high school. We all know that grades and test scores and things like this often track with socioeconomic class as well as race. So if we look at people who are in a school where it's diverse and there are a lot of people who have a lot more money or a lot more means than these kids do, or maybe they're from a different background or a different culture that is more competitive academically in terms of their outcomes, right? If there's basically an achievement gap is what I'm saying, those kids are hurt potentially by this policy. So if you go to a high school and it's ranked 10 and you've got tons of really rich kids there and you've got some poor kids there, those are the poor kids that are probably going to be hurt more by this policy than the kid who, in LA might live in a really rough neighborhood and go to a not great high school. This can also hurt students, basically anyone who attends a private school. I found that the UC school system favors those who attend public schools over private schools in my experience, in the sense that in order to enhance diversity, they want to make sure that they reach a hand out to people who attend all kinds of schools as opposed to just private ones. So you're not going to get an advantage by attending a private school in a way that I think some more elite universities might give you that leg up if you've got that kind of like private school education or you've really proven yourself, especially like small liberal arts colleges, things like that. So those students might be somewhat hurt by this kind of a policy. One other measure that I think is of note that schools like the University of California, who don't use race as a factor in admission, are now using to try to bring in underrepresented people is the idea of whether you are the first in your family to go to college or if your parents did not attend college. If that describes you, then that might work as a factor in your favor because colleges want to bring in people who come from backgrounds that don't set them up necessarily to go to college. So if that describes you, please don't be embarrassed by it. Please don't hide it. Make sure that you put that down on your application because it could definitely help you. Again, all of this idea of who it helps and who it hurts, it's all with a grain of salt because every application does have some subjective review. Everybody's application is looked at subjectively by an individual and by a human being, but it's really hard to completely do college admissions off of subjective criteria. And so when race cannot be considered as a factor, oftentimes it's hard to be able to tell your story and make sure that if you did have a lack of opportunity, that that story gets out there or it gets told or that you don't get lost in the shuffle. I think colleges are also looking out for sort of flags on applications that indicate that students do come from a background in which they have economic hardship. So if there is some way for you to put that down on your application, it's not going to hurt you. When you're filling out your college application, your goal is to try to promote empathy in people. And if you've had a tough run, you need to make that known, especially when you're applying to schools that aren't going to look at race, if that's a factor that may have helped you if the school did look at race. So there you go. So that's about it for this video. I hope you guys liked it. If so, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and I'll see all of you guys next time. Ciao, ciao.